growing up, and when I was 14 years old, I walked into swim practice one night and I never walked out.
Are you seeing
A coach had
that?
us doing a new racing dive in the shallow end of the pool, and I hit my head at the bottom of the pool, and in an instant, my life changed, and I became a quadriplegic. To be able to try to button my shirt, as you can see, is pretty much impossible. With buttons to buttons, I can actually button my shirt faster than if I even had use of my hands. It's that fast. It's such a simple idea, but it's going to make such a huge impact in people's lives. You're giving them back, their self-confidence and their independence. They're giving them back their choice, and that's all things that are so important.
Nice.
Okay. Are we back to the share screen is a weird thing.
Better be sure what's on your screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Anthony, you're ready to go? And we're going to be recording this so folks will be able to see it. We're getting lots and lots of visitors to our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Susan,
perfect.
I thought we were starting with Cheryl because she has to leave at 2:30. Am I
Yeah,
right?
did.
Oh, okay. Are we doing that? All right. I thought, right. Fine. That's good. I'll put the spotlight on you.
All right.
Okay.
Well, you guys just heard a little bit of my story from the Buttons to Buttons video. I've been a competitive swimmer pretty much all my life. When I was 8 years old, my parents got me into swimming lessons, and I was at the local YMCA, and at 8 years old, a coach saw me and said, "Where are your parents?" And I was recruited at the age of 8 and joined my first swim team when I was 8 years old, and quickly fell in love with the sport. And like most young athletes, I think they dream about reaching the pinnacle of their sport someday. And for me, that was to be able to compete in the Olympics. You saw at the beginning of the video, those of you who are old enough to know who Mark Spitz is, I have the throwback 1970 Mark Spitz swimsuit on in that beginning of that Buttons to Buttons video. So I was always an Olympic junkie and loved watching it. And like I said, dreamed of going to the Olympics someday. And then at 14, I broke my neck and became a quadriplegic. But it didn't stop me from pursuing my athletic dreams. I actually got into Paralympic swimming. So I got to go to the Olympics, not as an Olympian, but a Paralympian. And I competed in the 2000, 2004, and 2008 Paralympic Games, where I won 4 Paralympic medals. I also have multiple American records and world records. And I swam internationally as part of the United States Paralympic team for 16 years and retired in 2014. And it left a huge void in my life. Swimming and training was all I pretty much knew for my whole adult life. And I was looking for another athletic outlet, and I found competitive wheelchair ballroom dancing. So I now do competitive wheelchair ballroom dancing. People don't realize it, but para dance is actually a Paralympic sport. It's just not one of those sports that are contested in the Paralympic Games. We are trying to get it added as a Paralympic sport, but as of right now, it is not contested in the Paralympic Games, but it is considered a Paralympic sport. They have world championships, they have competitions all over the world. My partner and I made our international debut in 2017, and we were ranked 7th in the world. So I'm enjoying a second act, as you might say, in sports, doing competitive wheelchair ballroom dancing now.
How does somebody know at that age that they're going to be an amazing swimmer?
I wasn't always the best swimmer. I'll say that. I used to get the workhorse award. So I was a hard worker, and I think that sometimes if you have a really strong work ethic and really strong passion, sometimes that supersedes natural talent. You can have all the natural talent in the world, but if you don't have the heart, the passion, and the work ethic, it's wasted. So. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Now,
Okay.
where would one go to get more information about Paralympic dancing?
So yeah, so you can go to Para Dance, World Para Dance. If you Google it, it'll take you to the Para Dance, and you can see pretty much all of the competitions have been canceled for this year. My partner and I were supposed to compete in the Netherlands in April. We had our tickets, he had his visa, we were all set to go, and then, you know, coronavirus impacted all of us. We were also supposed to go to Malta for Thanksgiving. So yeah, I'm disappointed that the competitions have been canceled this year. In fact, my dance studio, because we live in Michigan and we're still, you know, in phase 4, the dance studio falls in the same category as gyms. So I have not danced with my partner since early March. So I'm really missing dancing. And so as kind of a workaround, I started a wheelchair Zumba class, and we had our first dance cardio class this past Sunday. I had 24 girls that attended, and so I'm going to be doing that as a way to kind of be active and kind of socialize with all of the people that I miss.
Is your partner able-bodied or with a disability?
So in para dance, there are a couple of categories. There is what they call duos, and duos are two, a male and a female who are both in a wheelchair. And then there's the combine class, and the combine class is a standing partner and a seated partner. So I compete in combi, and my partner is a standing partner, and he's from Azerbaijan and came here to the United States to start dancing with me and to teach here in the United States. So we can compete in every single competition except world championships because we're considered a mixed nationality couple. He's in the process of becoming a US citizen, but until he does, we can, like I said, compete in all of the events except world championships for Paradance.
So where do you live? Where is your studio?
I dance at the Fred Astaire studio in Bloomfield Hills, and that's where he teaches. So we train there, and so I failed to mention that when I got into dancing, I loved it so much that I wanted to be able to share it with other people because it's a sport that not many people here in the United States know about. So the owner of Fred Astaire studio in Bloomfield Hills, Evan Mountain, and myself, we co-founded Dance Mobility, which is funded by the Rehabilitation Institute of Michigan Foundation. So once a month, we offer a free wheelchair ballroom dance group lesson. And it's been amazing. My class is full almost every time. Gerald's been to many classes, so she comes as a volunteer, as a standing volunteer for those participants who come that don't have a partner. So that started in 2015. We celebrated our 5th year. It's hard to believe this year. And then in 2016, I started a program for amputees. So we also have the day that we do our wheelchair ballroom dance class, we also do an amputee class for anyone who is an upper or lower extremity amputee. So
it's a lot of fun
to be able to share, you know, the sport that I love with other people.
Can you dance any chair, or do you need, I mean, I'm assuming there are specialized chairs, but do some people just dance in their very ordinary?
They do. You know, these wheelchair people are very smart. They sell a chair for everything, right? Tennis, basketball, rugby. There is a dance chair. I do have a specialized chair for dancing, and how it differs from my everyday chair is that it's lighter weight, and that the wheels are cambered. And when I mean cambered, you probably see some of the basketball players that have their wheels set at an angle, and that's what we call camber. And so the wheels are cambered so that I can turn and spin much faster than I can in my everyday chair. And my partner's a very strong man. We actually do lifts, so he does lift me over his head in my wheelchair. So it is important that I have a lightweight wheelchair. So so yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I love it.
I wrote in the chat, but I said the performance at the Fox, which was with your initial partner, or was that with?
That was Sergio, my first
Sergio.
Sergio.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was so amazing. I wanted to cry. Like it was beautiful dance, and there's parts that surprise you. So if you can look up on YouTube, Cheryl Angelelli dance Fox Theater, you'll see that performance. It pops up pretty up top.
Or you can, I have a TEDx out there too.
Oh,
That's a really great video too, the one that we
yes.
spoke at TEDx Detroit. So if you Google my name in TEDx, we got to perform at one of the TEDx events, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Well, my seniorness is forgetting names, but a couple years ago, we presented a young able-bodied girl and a young man with CP,
Mm.
who's ambulatory, who studied at your
Oh
studio
yeah, yeah,
at the
okay.
Michigan Youth Arts Festival.
Yes, yeah, yeah. She's from the Lansing area. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I have not seen her in a while. She hasn't been to one of our classes in a while, but I know that she's
I have
very
to
busy.
search.
She's a very bright young woman and involved in a lot of activities.
She was planning on starting a
Yes.
school herself.
Yep, she
I
was.
don't know
Yep.
how that's gone. We'll have
I
to.
don't, it was a school project. She had to come up with like a business plan. And so it was kind of like her school, it was a school project, you know, her idea. So like I said, she's a very bright and very driven young girl. So I wouldn't be surprised if she does have a school someday.
Well, they performed in front of a whole lot of teenagers
Oh, that's cool.
who are very gifted in the arts and
Yeah,
were very well received.
good.
Yeah. Cheryl, you know what else was one of my favorite things that you did is you and your partner went down to a school where a young lady, I believe that was a wheelchair user, was performing, and you taught her partner how to dance with her for part of their role. And
Yeah.
I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. So, you know, obviously, there's been a lot of media attention around my story and my dancing, and a teacher in in Memphis area, actually like a rural area of, and the closest town was Memphis, and it was like 2 hours from them. And so the teacher had reached out to me. She had like a 10-year-old girl in a wheelchair who was quite shy but interested in theater, and she had gotten the lead in the school play, and one of the scenes called for a dance with her and her co-star, and she didn't know what to do. So she had reached out to me and asked if we could do stuff, you know, via Zoom or online, which it's really difficult because to be able to teach somebody, it's really kind of a hands-on experience because you have to feel and know how to move the wheelchair. And so, you know, I said, I think we can do one better. So my partner and I flew out there and we surprised this little girl, and they had given us the music beforehand, and we had choreographed the routine and taught it to her and her co-star. And yeah, so I'm still in touch with that family. So yeah, it was very special.
That's nice. Cheryl, since we're talking a little bit about the ADA, have you experienced benefits to the ADA, something that you're really appreciative to that you've been able to do because of the ADA?
You know, my accident happened in 1991. So, you know, or I'm sorry, it happened in 1983. So 6 years before the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And as a young person, you know, when I was hurt at 14 years old, had a lot of anxiety of what my future was going to be like. Would I be able to go to school? Would I be able to travel? Would I be able to live independently? So, you know, the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act really gave me some peace of mind that at least, you know, I would have some basic human rights that many people take for granted, and that I would be able to, it really has afforded me to live a very full and productive life.
Is there anything you think we still could do better that you've encountered?
Yeah, you know, the world is not perfect. I still encounter, you know, discrimination from time to time, or architectural barriers. But I think it's important that we continue to educate and advocate when we do stumble upon those type of situations, because if it wasn't for the early, you know, civil rights activists, disability activists, we wouldn't have had the ADA. So I think that it's up to us to continue to push for changes when we encounter them, so that, you know, we leave the world a better place for those behind us, just like, you know, those early civil rights activists did for us.
Right. I have often found when people learn that they've done it wrong, they want to do better.
They do.
You know,
For 9 times out of 10, they probably don't even know that they're doing it wrong, you know.
Right. Does
So when are you
anyone
going
else
out
have
to New York to see Annie Oakley?
Oh, yes, I would love to go see her. It's amazing that she won the Tony, and yeah, that would be a lot of fun. But I am not going anywhere for some time. I am not ready to sit down in a restaurant, get on an airplane, or put myself in a situation where there's a lot of people right now. It's I work for a health system, so I probably know more than I should, but you know, I am being very, very cautious and limiting who I'm around and what I'm doing for sure.
Very good.
So I failed to mention that my everyday job is I work in marketing for the Detroit Medical Center. So that is my everyday job. I have a college degree in communications from Oakland University here in Michigan. Go
So
Goose.
we've got a few others. Any of you want to ask some questions? Mindy, Ramsey, want to unmute yourself and ask anything? You're welcome to ask.
Cheryl, I have another question. I know the wheelchair dance has been on hold right now, but what media or how would we let others know? Because some of these will be replaying on like a YouTube where it would, so what would be the best way to find out about when the program's ready to restart so people can come? Because it's super fun. I left there with a grin the first time I went to volunteer, and I try to go as much as I could.
Yeah, we love having you. They could go to Dance Mobility on Facebook. They can also find me on Facebook on my public page, my fan page. Just look for the blue check next to my name, so that's my official site. Or if they're on Instagram, they can follow me at Wheel Dancer USA, and I post about all of our upcoming events there. So those are a few ways that they can find out about us.
I don't know how to use Instagram yet, but I've learned lately I need to know how.
Yes.
So how physically fit does somebody need to be to do wheelchair dancing?
You know, that's the great thing. That's the great thing about our program is that you know, it's for manual wheelchair users and power wheelchair users. So if you use a power chair, we just adapt the dance so that you can dance in your power wheelchair. So you know, the movements that we do with our arms, you know, we mimic the pattern that you guys would do with the joystick. So there really are no limitations to dance. And I always say when you come to our dance program, there's no wrong or right steps. We're all there just to have fun and be together. So
just for the record, I don't dance, but I had fun, and they break it down so well that I could follow and still be a help to someone who needed a partner. So you don't have to be some expert to help, and
right. You don't have to have dance experience, right? Mm-hmm.
Cheryl, are you? Did you say your studio and stuff is in Detroit?
I dance, and our program is run out of the Fred Astaire Dance Studio in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan.
Oh, Bloomfield.
Yeah, on Franklin Road there.
Yeah, that's right before Telegraph at Square Lake, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I used to drive by there every week taking my daughter to some soccer training around the corner.
Ultimate Soccer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you call, they'll probably answer the phone, but they are officially closed. There are no lessons or anything going on until we move into phase 5. Fingers crossed.
I know we're at 2:28 and Cheryl has to leave for another meeting. Is there one last question before she heads out? Anybody? Can someone dance in a power chair, by the way? That won't be the last question.
Yes, actually there is. If you look up wheelchair ballroom dancing and you see some of the competitions that they have internationally, you will see some couples, able-bodied person with somebody in a power chair. So they do compete internationally as well.
Great.
So Cheryl, I just searched YouTube and I couldn't find the buttons to buttons video, and I'm wondering if we can get the links because I'd like to post them on our Michigan Arts Access Instagram and Facebook.
I think Susan has them because she played the video. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have the dance ones too?
I have the
Yeah,
one
Michael.
buttons.
Michael, if you Google my last name, or even in YouTube or Google it, a ton of stuff will come up.
Okay,
I promise.
great, thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. So Anthony, thank you for tag teaming with me and offering to take the second half hour. I'm sorry that I won't be able to listen to your presentation, but I hear you have an amazing story too, and I'm sure that the folks on here are going to learn a lot from you too.
Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you very
guys. Have a
much.
good rest of your day. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank you.
Stay healthy. Bye.
So Anthony, I should let you know that we already had a message for you.
Yeah, it was
so
from
blue.
yeah, I saw it was from Ramsey. I saw, you know, like I told Mike in the beginning, I'm married to a Wolverine, so my wife would she'd be all for those messages and everything. But first and foremost, everybody, thank you so much for having me on here. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe. Obviously, we are in a very interesting time period, but, fingers crossed we, get back to some sense of, normal sooner rather than later. For those of you that don't know my background and don't know my story, I'll kind of give you the shorter version of it. When I was 4 years old, I was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder, which is an autism spectrum disorder. And what's really unique about my diagnosis is I was diagnosed in 1993 at age 4. And during that time period, the early 90s, nobody really knew what autism was. Nobody knew a lot of the characteristics for it. There was zero awareness for it, and there was no path and guidance and resources for autism during that time. And that was also the era of the ADD, ADHD era for diagnosis. So my autistic diagnosis was very, very rare during that time period. A year later, when I was 5 years old, a group of doctors and professionals told my parents these words in a private meeting. They told my parents that because I have autism, that I would barely graduate from high school, never go to college, never be an athlete, and I would end up in a group institution with other autistic kids like myself for the rest of my life. Now, I wasn't told this story until my freshman year in high school, so that kind of became my motivation to go out and prove those people and any other doubters and naysayers that had my life wrong. I had to work hard at everything, from basketball to my social life, and especially school, because I'm not afraid to admit this, I was not the smartest kid that went to my high school. I wasn't. I had good grades. I had some bad grades here and there, but that's because each and every single day for me was a different day with an even more difficult challenge. But I had great teachers who sacrificed and supported a lot for me to help me get through those tough days and challenges, but more importantly, help me become the best student that I can be. But throughout my life, it wasn't just teachers who always supported me. It was friends, coaches, teammates, and family. So the rest would be history. I went on to graduate from the great Okemos High School in 2007, where I then went on to Grand Valley State University for 2 years on full scholarship for basketball. Now, I was only at Grand Valley State for 2 years because things just weren't working out as well as I hoped they would. So I decided to leave Grand Valley State to fulfill my lifelong dream, which was the dream of playing for a certain coach at a certain university. So I left Grand Valley State to go play for Coach Tom Izzo in the Michigan State Spartans, where I was a walk-on for 2 years. My senior year, Coach Izzo awarded me a full-ride scholarship. I was a part of 2 Big Ten championship teams, a team that won the Big Ten tournament title, a team that went to a Final Four, and I got to play with an outstanding group of individuals who to this day I'm proud to call each of those guys my brothers. But I'm proud of 2 things in my life, and the first one is this. During my time at Michigan State, I actually became the first ever Division I college basketball player in NCAA history to play with an autism diagnosis, and I'm very proud of that. But I think I'm even more proud of the fact that I graduated and got my bachelor's degree in sociology from Michigan State. And so today I'm now a national motivational speaker, and I work with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, where I head up our anti-bullying initiative called the Relentless Tour, which is an initiative I first started 7 years ago at a nonprofit. And the Relentless Tour is a first ever grassroots initiative, anti-bullying initiative of its kind in the state of Michigan. So we travel all over the state, all over the country, promoting both autism and anti-bullying awareness. In the last 3 years, I've spoken to over 173,000 individuals in the state and around our country, and over 400 schools and events. So I'm a very, very busy individual. Not as much now because I'm doing a lot of things virtual. I actually had offers to go speak at the largest autism conference in Asia in Macau, China back in April, and obviously that got canceled because of the pandemic. And I had an offer to go speak in in Canada as well, at a big event in front of 8,000 people. So, but I'm staying very busy. But, you know, the one thing about my life story is, you know, when I mentioned how my parents told me at 14 years old about my autism diagnosis and what those doctors and professionals said about me as a 5-year-old kid. And the only thing that was going through my mind at that time was, you know, who would say this about a 5-year-old? Like, why would somebody say this? You know, I haven't even learned a lot of my numbers. I haven't even started, like, you know, artwork or anything like that. So, like, who would say this about a 5-year-old? But I was glad I had a better understanding of, you know, what autism is, what my diagnosis was, and how, you know, because there are a lot of people today who look at me and go, well, you don't have those characteristics. Like, you know, you're not that person with autism. And I've always told folks, well, what does a person with autism look like to you? Because a person with autism can have many characteristics, and the spectrum is so massive. Like, there's an old saying, once you've met a person with autism, you've met a person with autism, because an individual on the spectrum, no matter where they're at, are so unique in their very own way. So my characteristics with autism, I'm very black and white. So what that means is one of you on here may say something to me, and I'll take it the complete opposite. And growing up, I had a tough time understanding nouns, verbs, idioms, sarcasm, and jokes. I'm better now than what I was 10 years ago, but I still continue to have these struggles, and I'm going to have these struggles for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that. I've accepted it because that's what makes me me. So, but after my parents told me what happened when I was 5 years old, I then went back into our living room of the house, and I just kind of sat in my chair for 30 seconds. And I said, all right, you know what it is. Now let's go shut some people up, because it wasn't just doctors and professionals I had that were doubting me. I had a lot of people in our community that doubted me. I had a lot of people at my school who disrespected me and doubted me. So I worked really hard each and every single day in the classroom, on the court, despite having autism. Like, I didn't let my diagnosis stop me from living out my dream, which was to play college basketball, preferably at Michigan State. So I kind of had this checklist in my head, and the checklist was, all right, first things first, graduate from high school, because they said you're barely going to do that. Go get a full ride scholarship somewhere, hopefully Michigan State basketball, because they said you're never going to be an athlete. And the big one, graduate from college, because they said you're never going to graduate from college, let alone step foot on a college campus anywhere in the country. So in high school, I was recruited by a lot of schools. I was recruited by Michigan, Michigan State, Notre Dame, Purdue, Wisconsin, Eastern, Central, Western, a lot of the other MAC schools, Grand Valley State, Ferris, Valparaiso, Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne. And so all my hard work was really, really starting to come together. And I was not going to let my diagnosis stop me from living out my dreams, or living out and achieving my goals and what I wanted to accomplish. And I've always had the saying of, autism doesn't define you, you define it, or you define yourself, because you don't let something stop you from doing what you love to do in life. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I do what I love to do as a motivational speaker. Is I go out and talk to these students and talk to these sports teams at different conferences and leadership councils all over the state and all over the country about how I was not going to let something bring me down and stop me from going out and achieving my goals and achieving my dreams, because only one person was going to stop me from doing that, and that was me. And I was always taught in my life to never let my autism be a crutch in life. And if I ever used it as an excuse, if I ever pulled out the autism card, like I wasn't a great test taker in school. You know, again, that's something I'm not afraid to admit that, because there would be words, sentences, or phrases on my test I would get so easily confused on, I would get them wrong. And if I didn't do so good on a test and I pulled out, well, it's because I have autism, you know, that's why I struggle. Either my mom, my dad, or my teachers would just give me this evil stare and just say, no, you're not going to pull that card with us. You didn't do good on this test for 2 reasons. Either you didn't study or you rushed through it. So don't pull that card with us. And that's what I've always talk to individuals on the spectrum about as well, that don't use it as an excuse, because number one, you're going to get in trouble like I did as a young kid. But number two, you want to show people that, you know, autism is not the reason why you do what you do in life. You are the reason why. Your skills are the reason why you do what you love to do. So I wasn't recruited in high school by other coaches around the country because I have autism. They recruited me because they saw how hard I worked as a player, how good I was in the classroom, and how good I was as a person. That's why I went to Grand Valley State on a full ride, and then that's why Michigan State recruited me in high school and kept keeping an eye on me, even when I was at Grand Valley State. So, but that's basically me. You know, so I'm always going to tell folks that you don't let a disability or a diagnosis define you. You define it because you define yourself as a person in life.
So what's your feeling about the word autism? It seems to me that, I mean, the word has existed, or the diagnosis existed now for about 20 years. But I've noticed, like, in the last 10 years that it's now being used very differently than what it was 10 years ago, in that, like you're saying, an awful lot of kids use it as an excuse for failure. And I almost think that having the diagnosis is almost like, I mean, there are people who say it's a death sentence. Well, the diagnosis isn't the death sentence, is the acceptance of it as a death sentence is. And I don't know, it seems like the label's doing more harm than good, but I don't know.
So for me, Susan, like, you know, and you're not the first person to ask me that. Like, I've had other family and members and parents ask me the same question. And because I recently had, you know, my two twin nieces who just turned 3 years old, they were diagnosed at 1.5 years, both of them. And, you know, like my mom, when I was diagnosed, like, even though they're not my kids, they're still my nieces. Like, it hit me hard because I was like, oh man, like, they're both diagnosed. But then I didn't have time to be sad about it. You know, I got to work and I started calling people who work in the autism field. Like, hey, like, where can my nieces get the best ABA therapy, or where can they get the best, you know, treatments or whatever to help them be successful? And so I was calling people left and right, you know, people that I knew, and I gave them my sister's contact information, and then boom, they immediately got the right therapist. And now one of them, because before they were nonverbal, now one talks up a storm like crazy, and she's being social like no other. And then my other niece, the other twin, you know, she's learning words slowly, but she's starting to interact with people a little bit more. She's high-fiving people. So just seeing like how far they have come in just 1.5 years of after being diagnosed has been incredible. So I've always told families, like, you know, the difference between when I was diagnosed and where they're at today is you have the resources. You have the ABA therapist. You have the resources in the path to help your kids where they want to go in life, or where you want to help your family. Whereas me, there was nothing. There were two things. My mom and the late Sandy McDonald, who was the assistant director for special education in Okemos. She was the one that kind of gave us that path, and my mom helped us stay on the path. But again, there was nothing during when I was diagnosed. So I don't call it it shouldn't be a death sentence or anything. Like, yeah, is it a punch to the gut? Absolutely. But at the same time, you know where you can go and find those resources. But also at the same time, and you mentioned, Susan, when people think of the word autism, society immediately thinks, oh, well, this is a person who's not going to do much in life because, you know, this is what autism is. These are the characteristics for it. Again, I always challenge and question those individuals who say that. Well, what does autism look like to you? If you think a person with autism is somebody who has to be helped with for the rest of their life, like, that's not everybody with autism. Like, that's one individual in particular. And I have to explain what the spectrum is. You have individuals who are low functioning, mid functioning, high functioning, like myself. And until society understands that autism is a giant spectrum and each and every single one of those individuals are unique, we're going to be stuck with where we're at. And that's why I've always been the fan of changing Autism Awareness Month to Autism Acceptance Month, because it's time for society to start accepting the autism community no matter where they're at on the spectrum. And so I'm going to continue to try to make that push as much as I can. But that was one of the other biggest reasons why I started being a motivational speaker, is that we don't have a lot of leaders in the autism community. We have one right now, which is Temple Granite. Now, I met Temple multiple times. She's fantastic. But Temple's not going to continue to do what she's going to do forever. like she's not going to be around forever. So who's going to be that next person to kind of step up and be that and take on that leadership role? And I asked my wife that question after I gave my first ever presentation. And I told her, I asked her, I said, name, other than Temple Grandin, name me somebody else in the autism community who's like that from a leadership perspective, a role model perspective. And she couldn't name anybody. And that's when I flat out told my wife, I said, all right, I'm going to go be that person then. I'm going to go be that hero, that role model, that leader that folks in the autism community can look up to. Because when they need hope, when they need inspiration, they need to turn to somebody. And, you know, so when I go to these schools and I help these students who don't understand autism, when I help them tell my story, they get a better idea of what autism is and how autism can just be more than just what, you know, certain folks in society think it is, which is just one part of the spectrum.
So you're talking about what you tell others about autism. What do you tell kids who have autism and have sort of accepted that they're defeated already?
I tell them to get right back up and keep going, because there were times when I could have easily just stopped and quit what I was doing and just give up. But I was not going to let the doubters and the people who always disrespect me win. I was not going to let a diagnosis defeat me. And that's what I've always told kids on the spectrum who feel defeated, is that, like, I've been in your shoes. Like, I know what it's like. And I almost gave up one time, but there was a part of me that refused. And I've also told kids on the spectrum that find your role model. It doesn't have to be me. It could be somebody else. And so I remember I was talking to a student a couple years ago who's on the spectrum, who came up, talked to me and said, I'm ashamed to have autism. I'm not proud of it. I think it's a curse. Like, you know, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere in life. And I told him, I said, well, let me ask you this. What's your favorite sport? And he said, well, I love basketball. And I said, okay, who's your favorite player? And he said, well, I love Kobe Bryant. And I said, okay. I said, go look at Kobe Bryant online. Just Google Kobe Bryant and Google his story, why he works so hard, why his mentality is just through the roof, hard work nonstop. If you try to adapt that mentality, things will change for you. And so about a couple of weeks later, I got an email from one of the teachers of that school, and told me about what this student was doing, how he took my advice and went and learned more about Kobe Bryant, the person, and not just the basketball player. And he kind of adapted Kobe Bryant's like mentality, the Mamba mentality, if you will, being a hard worker and just going at it no matter what people tell you. And I was proud to hear that student, you know, kind of just got out of his funk, if you will, and went on to, you know, do great things in school. And this was a middle schooler at the time. And so that's why I've always told young kids on the spectrum, is that find that role model, find that inspirational story that's going to help carry you. Or even if it's me, look back and go, oh man, Anthony Ianni had to deal with all this, and he had to deal with these folks who doubted him, but look where he is at today. Now, have there been some that just flat out just said, I can't do this anymore, like it's just not going to help? You know, I've had kids say that to me, but I've also told them to use your support system, whether it's family, teachers, administrators, a therapist, whatever, because you're going to have people in your corner, even if it's only one person. And once they found that support system as well, like they've used it to the fullest. So, but it's also on us as a society to encourage that as well. Like, it can't just be me doing that every day. Like, thus the acceptance. Like, we have to accept that these individuals can do great things and that they are capable of doing incredible things no matter where they are at on the spectrum.
So what do you have the greatest difficulty with because of your autism?
So obviously the jokes and the sarcasm are still a big weakness of mine. You know, I've been happily married to an incredible woman for over 7 years, and, you know, she loves to joke and be sarcastic, but there are times where I can't catch it, and then I'll think she's actually being serious, but then she'll see that serious look on my face and she'll just say to me, you know, Anthony, it's okay. I'm just joking, you know, hashtag sarcasm. It's okay. So the joking and the sarcasm piece has always been a big difficult thing for me. But another thing is, if I get like certain ideas or think about certain situations in my head, I can't let them go. Like I can't let them go. So if so I'll use the pandemic as a great example. You know, when we first went into lockdown, you know, I was kind of moping around the house for a little bit, and I was complaining to my wife about why did this have to happen? You know, I was on a roll. You know, I was on pace to speak to over 160,000 individuals this year with the Relentless Tour. Now it's only going to be 40, which is still quite a bit. And I was just like, why did this happen? Why did this? And so it was a situation that I just kept talking about every day. But that's just me being on the spectrum, because I can't let go of certain situations. I can't let go of certain ideas until it happens or until something happens. So thus makes me probably the most impatient person in the world, because I want things to happen now. I need them to do, like, they need to happen today, tomorrow. I need this now. But, you know, that's me. And the nouns, the verbs, and the idioms, like I learned all that in school, but I still struggled with it, you know, even growing up. So a lot of the language aspect is a big struggle for me, and something that I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life, which again, I'm okay with. But just dealing with certain, you know, getting certain ideas or dealing with certain situations that I may not be able to let go, or like some other people would, or even just like little things on social media, like I see in the last, you know, 24 hours. And, you know, just people having different opinions, and like, which I'm all for, like everybody has an opinion. I respect them no matter what. But I'll get easily triggered by somebody saying something crazy on social media, and it'll just bother me. Whereas the ordinary person will just look at that and go, oh, no big deal, and walk away. So those are a lot of the things that I'm going to have to deal with being on a spectrum forever. But again, like I've accepted the fact that I'm okay with it, because that's what makes me me.
Are you getting any ADA accommodations with work, or are there not any that you needed?
No, there's none that I needed. You know, I first started doing all my work with a nonprofit out of Detroit, and then Matt Weesaw, who was the director of the Department of Civil Rights at the time in 2015, they were looking for an anti-bullying initiative, and Matt was, you know, he had followed me in my work for a year, and so he had brought me on. And I remember the first day I was on the job, I walked into his office, we had a conversation, and he just flat out said to me, like, look, like, the Relentless Tour is yours. Like, you run with it, do what you want with it. Just as long as you get my permission for certain things, you can go out of state with it. Like, I'm not going to stop you. Like, because we want to be the leaders when it comes to the anti-bullying initiative and the anti-bullying world. So, and when it comes to the autism field, we want to be leaders in that, and you're going to be our guy to do it. So I really haven't had to have a lot with ADA or anything like that. But, you know, I was always encouraged by people to, you know, ask for the resources and help that I need to get to where I want to go, so I can get that guidance, whether it was through ADA, through people in our department. So I was always encouraged by others to make sure that I asked others to get the help that I needed, because if there's a resource out there that's offered me or given to me to help me be successful in what I do, you know, I'm going to take it and run with it.
Anybody got any questions?
So Ramsey asked me here, what type of accommodations did I have during my college years? And Ramsey, it's definitely not too personal. No question is I always tell people no question is too personal for me. So my accommodations in college were, I had when I was at Green Valley State, I had access to tutors if I wanted them. My test accommodations were extended time on my test, a reader, because again, I get certain words and phrases mixed up really easily. So I had a reader. I took my tests in a separate room, because if we all on here took a test right here and now in one giant classroom, I couldn't keep focused. I'd be more worried about what Susan's doing in the back row, or what Mindy's doing in the front, or what Michael's doing over here on the wall. Like, you know, so I would get just so out of focus that I couldn't focus on my test. So having that room by myself with my reader, like, helped me stay focused. And if it was a math test, you know, I was allowed to have a calculator sometimes, depending, you know, if my professor was okay with it, which they were pretty much most of the time. So those are a lot of the accommodations I had. And then when I got to Michigan State, I had, you know, nonstop access to the Clarabelle Student Academic Center. So I was probably in there, you know, a lot outside of practice and classes, and outside of the weekends. I was in that, you know, academic building a lot. So So both Grand Valley State and Michigan State did a tremendous job helping me with my accommodations. RCPD, the Resource Center for Persons with Disabilities, they did an incredible job making sure I got my test accommodations as well.
I'm curious, Anthony, do you think at Michigan State that they were really more concerned with your disability, or just to make sure that you made the grades? Because I have two daughters that played college, or one's still playing college, D1 soccer, and you know, the academic side of it, there's all these requirements and study time, and they have individual plans and all this stuff, and you know, they don't have disabilities.
Right. So for me, Mike, it was, you know, it was both. They cared about my disability because they wanted to make sure that I got the accommodations that I needed. I got, you know, the access that I needed to the academic building, to RCPD, because, you know, that's the one thing I love about Coach Izzo, is that to him, basketball is an extra benefit to a lot of guys. But getting your degree is even bigger because, you know, he's always told guys who go pro early, like, look, I'm not going to stop you because you're good enough. But here's the deal. Like, if you're going to leave early, you got to promise me you're going to get your degree somehow, some way, whether you come back here when you're retired or whether you do online classes. Because he's always told guys who go pro, the NBA is not always going to be there for you. The money won't always be there for you. But your degree is going to last a lifetime for you. So even when I did struggle in class, like there was one time, and you know, I actually talked about this in my book that's coming out in fall 2021, that I actually had a conversation with Coach Izzo because I was doing so poorly. Like I was struggling in some of my classes, my redshirt junior year, that we both agreed that I was going to stay home from our trip to Maui, to the Maui Invitational, because, you know, because again, that was me telling him, like, I don't think I should be going. And then he just looked at me and said, yeah, I agree. And so number one, it was a punishment for me because I wasn't doing my part. But number two, it's because he cared about the grades. He cared about grades. So it was definitely more, you know, both directions. And that's what I loved about my coaches, was that they actually did everything they could to help, you know, communicate with me and to help be on the same page as me, because coaching an individual with autism in basketball, for them, I can definitely, you know, I could say on record that it was not easy because they had to do certain things and different things with me that they wouldn't do with, you know, your normal average everyday basketball player, which was either to take me off to the side and walk through a drill with me or walk through a play with me. So they went above and beyond. So they cared in so many ways, not just for my disability, my diagnosis, but, you know, also for the grades as well, because that's what's more important to them, is making sure that their kids, their players graduate and get their degree.
It's good to hear.
Thank you.
Ramsey's got another question. Did you experience any discrimination from other parents due to your disability while you were growing up? Probably more so when you were younger and may have struggled with a phase of a game.
It's a good question. So I never dealt with any discrimination or anything from parents because of my diagnosis or my disability. If anything, I had parents in high school who didn't understand it, because, you know, a good example, you know, funny story or serious story, however you want to take this. So when I was in high school, everybody, even to this day, everybody refers to me as AI. You know, those are my initials, Anthony Ianni. But AI also stands for autistically impaired. So when I was in high school, our student section had an AI cheer. All they did was, it was like the YMCA. They did, here's an A, and then here's an I, and then an A, and then an I. So that was my cheer every time I came out, announced in the starting lineup, or I scored or got a rebound. And one of the parents in the stands got offended by that, because they actually thought that they were chanting AI for autistically impaired. And so one of the parents went over to my mom and said, do you realize what the students are doing right now? My mom goes, yeah, they're chanting AI. They're like, don't the students know that means autistically impaired? And my mom just put her hand on her head and looked at this parent and goes, you do realize that Anthony Ianni stands for AI, right? Or AI stands for Anthony Ianni, right? And my mom told me that story. I was like, well, Mom, I said, that's what a lot of these parents kind of know me as ever since I was a kid. Like, they knew about my diagnosis, but, you know, they didn't understand it, and they still don't. So So I really was never discriminated against, but I still had parents out there who just flat out did not understand or did not get it as well as my family did.
So if you had one thing to say to a parent who has a child newly diagnosed, what would you say?
First and foremost, I would say, never give up. Just know that there's hope and inspiration for your son or daughter out there, because it is everywhere. If you have high expectations for your kids, you keep them there, no matter what the doctors or the professionals say what their future is. Because if you bring the expectations down, that's not fair. And you're bringing the expectations down for yourself, your family as well. So try to keep the expectations up here and try to let your kids fly, push them up, push them, because at the end of the day, they may not make it as far as they want to go, but they're going to make it a heck of a lot farther than what you think they can go. And so, so that's always been my main message, and to stick together and do it as a team. And I think that's the one thing that I was so blessed with at Okemos, was everything wasn't just my parents and then that was it. It was my parents, the administration, the principals, the teachers. It was a team effort. So if something worked in an IEP plan, but then didn't work anymore, they all got together, my parents, the administration, the teachers, and they all talked about, okay, well, this used to work, but now it doesn't. So what can we do now to help Anthony? What other plans can we use to help him get accommodated? So they all came together and they worked together. So don't try to do things on your own. Don't try to be the hero, but do it together as a team, because that's how your son or daughter is going to get through the tough days and the tough times in life, is to do it together, is to stick together. And this one, I know it's easier said than done, is to stay patient. Try to stay patient, because my parents were so patient with me. I pushed them to the edge, I don't know how many times, but they still were able to say, all right, stay patient, everything's going to pay off. So patience, no hope and inspiration is there. Keep the expectations high. Let your kids fly, because they're going to go farther than what others think they can go. And as always, stick together and do it as a team.
Well, thank you, Anthony. Those are very inspiring words. I'll try
Thank you, Susan.
remember to pass those on.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I think that's it. Unless we got some more questions.
There's one more right here from Ramsey. He asked, if you did it again, would you hide your diagnosis from the general masses or be very outward with it? So I think the only thing I would change, Ramsey, I wish I would have told my diagnosis publicly sooner. Because I know my senior year at Michigan State, MLive.com wrote like a big article about it, and it got a lot of attention. And so when I saw that, I was like, you know what? Part of me wishes I could have told it earlier, but I wasn't in a position during my early days at Michigan State to do that. And when it was talked about my senior year, that's when, things really started to just go upward for me. But that's the only thing I would change. But other than that, I wouldn't change anything else. Everything that I've done to this point in my life, there's an old saying, like, the good Lord, puts us on a crazy, crazy journey in life for a reason. We do things for a reason. And so, I'm just living the dream right now. So I wouldn't change anything other than maybe tell my story to others sooner when I was in college. That's about it.
Do you feel a lot of pressure being, the first with a diagnosis to play in D1 and, making sure that you're the perfect, student or whatever, like the perfect example, model, role model, all that kind of crap?
I really wouldn't say there's pressure, Mike. If anything, I embrace it because, for me, because I know there's going to be others. There's going to be other, great individuals who will be the first, individual with autism in a certain sport. I don't know if you heard of Armani Williams. He's the first NASCAR driver with autism. I'm actually meeting him and his mom tomorrow. They're coming out to an autism basketball camp I do with a nonprofit.
That's awesome.
We're doing it outside this year. Everybody's wearing masks.
Yeah.
So, but we're definitely keeping it safe and distance. But, what I love about Armani is he may be the first on the spectrum to do this, but also at the same time, he's showing other individuals with autism what they can do, what you're like, following your dreams and doing what you love to do, what you're capable of doing. And that was my whole mission after I graduated from college. Like, I didn't want to just be known as just the first Division I college basketball player to play. I also wanted to be that guy to go, hey, hold on one second. You can say hi, buddy, if you want to. This is my son right here.
Hello.
Hi.
I'll be done a little bit, okay, buddy?
Okay. I don't know how to transform him.
Okay, I'll transform him when I'm done.
No,
All
I
right?
want to show you everything.
Transformers?
Yeah, Power Rangers. Give me 5 minutes, okay? Can you go in your room?
No.
All right, you gotta be quiet when I'm right here, okay?
Okay.
Sorry about that. But I think the only pressure I have, Mike, honestly, is making sure I go out and inspire at least one person, everywhere I go, whether it's at a school, a conference, a business, or speaking to a sports team. That's the only pressure I have. But I actually embrace the fact that I was the first. And when others hear my story, other athletes who are on the spectrum hear my story, I want them to be able to look at my story and go, you know what? He cleared the path for us. He made the trail for us, for other trailblazers to follow. So that way those athletes can make their path, be trailblazers for the other generation behind them. So there's no pressure. Like I said, the only pressure I have is making sure I inspire at least one person, every time I go speak. But, I'm always going to embrace the fact that I was the first. And not only was I the first, but I did it, for the school that I love, the university that I love, which is Michigan State.
Yeah, sorry about that part.
All good, man. All good.
Notice Michael's shirt. His M. Was that chosen selectively today to wear?
No, I just put it on today. I've got lots of M gear.
Got it. My husband does too. That's funny. That's really interesting. Thank you, Anthony.
Well,
No,
thank
thank
you,
you.
Anthony. This is great.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
And we'll see you on the 27th,
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
11 a.m. on the 27th for kids.
Oh,
I'll
fun.
be there.
Very good.
They get to hear the anti-bullying presentation. So
Oh, good. Good.